Alright guys, I don't know about you, but I've always been a big fan of fairy tales. You know, like the classic Disney movies, the Disney princesses, anything with castles, kings and princesses and princes, and the whole good versus evil. You know, it's always intrigued me. And particularly a few years ago, I really got into fairy tales and stuff. So I just think of it, you know, it just seems really cool to think of it, but it never really felt real to me, you know. It's like a fantasy. It's like, oh yeah, in my wildest dreams, you know, there'd be a kingdom and streets of, you know, just gold, and we have this beautiful, if I was this beautiful princess, and there's this prince that comes and saves me, like the whole thing. It's just really great. And then like the little villages and the towns, everything with a fairy tale intrigued me. Well, come to think of it, I remember like a few years ago when I got into it, I'd like look at the sunsets, you know, like the pretty pink sunsets across the field, and I'd be like, I remember thinking to myself, why can't that be real? Why can't my reality be a fairy tale life instead of just real life? You know, why can't it be a fairy tale? That's like what I thought to myself. But then it hasn't hit me until recently, like in the latest months, you know, like during my times further in my relationship with Jesus and stuff, and really thinking in a more spiritual way than just like thinking of life. I, you know, view things more now spiritually and stuff. And so if you think about it, we are in our reality, we are actually in a real life fairy tale, kind of. Like, think of it. I mean, there's a kingdom, God's kingdom, number one, like the kingdom of heaven. That's a real thing. We have a kingdom we're going to be in. Like, you know, that's your kingdom right there. You have the king. You can't have a kingdom without someone being king. God's the king, so God's on his throne in his kingdom. And all of us are kind of, since we're like in God's family now, like we have our inheritance in heaven, you know, with our king and stuff, we're like princes and princesses, basically, like royal, basically, through Jesus, of course, not by ourselves. But just think of like the whole story playing out. Actually, we have a real life fairy tale, and every fairy tale, you know, you hear about the fairy tales, we have good versus evil. Like, that's the whole thing, is there's this kingdom, we have the characters in it, there's one side and another side that are against each other. You know, if you didn't have that in it, there's no storyline. That's pretty much the stories, is like there's the good versus evil part. There's also the prince and princess part. I'll get to that in a second. But we have the good and evil part. And so this verse I have from, I cannot see anymore, but I think it was, I have a screenshot. So I think it's from Romans, though, somewhere in Romans like 2, chapter 2. So they both my verses come from this. So it says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So like that verse is the main thing that made me think of it, like how in a fairy tale, good, we want the good to overcome the evil, you know, the villains and the heroes. And like, don't be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Ignore the lawnmower, okay? Don't be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So we, in our world, in our real life fairy tale, it's not a fantasy, it's a real thing, our reality, the realest fairy tale to ever exist, is we don't need to let ourselves be overcome by the evil, we have to overcome evil with good. And that might seem like hard. There's so much evil in this world and darkness. When we look around, it's like, how could we, you know, we try our best, we try to be good, and yet bad things still come to us, and it seems like we can't get past them, but we can overcome them. So we have the Lord, and he is good, and with Jesus, we can overcome the evil with good, and it's that simple. Like, that's how powerful that actually is. Like, the Lord has the power to help us overcome the evil in this world and in our lives. And also, we have another verse from the same chapter, so it's kind of related. I didn't know this until today, but it says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So think of it, picture your fairy tale. We're in God's kingdom, and we're his people. We also have the other side, the world that we live in right now, because we're not in the kingdom yet, but we're gonna be. But Think of it like we are surrounded. We're in the world right now, okay? The ruler, basically, of our world right now, we all know, is the enemy, the devil. Think of it, in in our fairy tales, we always have a villain. We have like an evil sorcerer or someone like that, you know? The evil, of course. We're gonna have good. We gotta overcome evil with good. So we have an evil side, okay? So, but because we are now of this world, we don't need to conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our minds. This world and the devil are trying to twist up our minds of what we originally probably knew was good. Like, it's twisted now. It's not pure and good and just anymore. It's all like twisted, everything, our views on stuff. The world has twisted everything. The world twists what love looks like. So then we, in this world we're going around, if we don't know any better, we don't have the Word, the Bible to go by, or the Holy Spirit to guide us, that's gonna look normal to us. Not just love, but many other things. I'm just saying, like, everything is twisted in this world. So that's why we need to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And then it says, then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. His good, pleasing, and perfect will. Then, after we are renewed in our minds every day by the Holy Spirit, we can be able to test and approve what God's will is. So, think of it, like I said a minute ago, our views are twisted, but that doesn't mean we're too far gone to come back to the good side, to Jesus, and have Him renew our minds. And then when we do, we'll be able to test and approve what God's will is. We can look and be like, oh, this is not the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do. You know, with the Holy Spirit, He'll show us and give us discernment between good and evil at that point. Because before we have the Holy Spirit transforming our mind, we're probably not going to be able to tell by ourselves. We're going to look and be like, well, that's what it looks like. That must be right. That's what the world is giving me. Okay? But then when we're transformed in our mind, everything is so much clearer to us. Our eyes are open and we're like, this is actually what's going on. So think of me, like even like years ago, even then I was a Christian, but like I never thought of it this way. But back then I would be like, you know, if only the fairy tale life was real. You know, if there's a castle and a kingdom and, you know, this good and evil thing. And then it's like, now when your eyes are open and my eyes were open, and it's like, I'm pretty much living in that, you know, and we all are, like, the realms against each other. We have the heavenly realm and the darkness, the realm of darkness or whatever, you know, against each other. This is a spiritual battle going on, like two kingdoms basically against each other. But then I also wanted to add this verse. It says, this is from Proverbs 24. For though the righteous fall 7 times, they rise again, but the wicked stumble when calamity strikes. In a fairy tale, let's say you're watching Sleeping Beauty. Does Maleficent win? No. Does any of the villains ever win? No, because for though the righteous fall 7 times, they rise again, but the wicked stumble when calamity strikes. The wicked is not going to prevail. No wickedness is going to prevail when you have good fighting the evil. You know, good is going to overcome evil regardless. And so, like, the righteous, think of it like the heroes, they might fall 7 times. They might, in the show, get shot down or get wounded, fall to the ground. How many times? And it seems like the villain's gonna win at that, like, part 3/4 through, and it's like, the climax, oh my gosh, you know, Maleficent's a big dragon. How is Prince Philip gonna defeat the dragon? You know, I love fairy tales, excuse me. But, like, think of that, you know, and it's like, the villain's gonna win. But we know deep down in our hearts when we're watching it, we know deep down it's like, somehow the hero's gonna come back. We don't know how, maybe, but we know he's gonna come back. So, like, you know, we know that Maleficent wasn't gonna win. And so, like, I mean, the dragon was not gonna defeat Prince Philip. And even though it may seem like that, but Philip had that goodness, that inner strength and goodness in him, and Maleficent was just evil and fighting with darkness. And that's when you had good pull through somehow. May not seem like it, but that's how powerful the Lord's power can be with goodness, you know. And It says, but the wicked stumble when calamity strikes. Yeah, I don't think it ended too well for that dragon. But yeah, so also coming back to the other aspect of things, the prince and princess, my favorite parts. Think about this. We are like, we have like, think of it, Prince Philip. That's like, Jesus is our Prince Philip, or whoever prince you like most. You know, we've got a bunch of options. I'm just using Sleeping Beauty for example because it was my childhood favorite. But you know, think of it. We're like Aurora. We needed saving. You know, we're also, you could think of it this way. Aurora was sleeping. She was asleep. She didn't know what was going on around her at the time, but the prince did. And he came and saved her, and he defeated the enemy, and he came and saved her, and then they had a happily ever after. Do you know that could be like us? We're like Auroras in this world, sleeping sometimes. We may not see what's going on, but Jesus knows, and he sees everything, what's going on. He knows the bigger picture, and that's why he knows that he needs to save us from the evil in this world, even if we can't see it coming at us half the time. The enemy is always going around trying to get us. And think of it. Jesus, our Prince Philip, is out there fighting for us every second of time. Because that's how much he cares about us and wants to win us back and get his true love back. Who are us. That we are his true love. And also, do you know how our story is going to end? I mean, besides the fact that we're going to be with him for eternity with Jesus. It's like our own happily ever after. You know that there's gonna be a wedding feast and stuff, you know, and all the shows. The prince and princess end up getting married and they live in their kingdom together at the end. I mean, it's right in front of us all these years. People writing fairy tales, writing the stories, good versus evil. The prince and princess. The prince saving the princess. They get together. They live happily ever after. That has been written for years. People have this thing in their heads, and yet I don't even know that we actually know that that's what's going on around us, you know? All these people in the world that need to know that Jesus is the one true Lord, and this is our story. This is our own fairy tale, and it's real. It's not fake like all the other fictional stories. They're great, but they're fictional. Ours is even greater because ours is real. And so also I just want to get back to that with the wedding and stuff. You know, Jesus is coming back. He's coming back for his bride, which is us, the church, as a one body, you know. He's coming back because he loves us, and he's going to take us, and it's like a wedding. You know, he's like the groom and we're the bride, and then it's going to be like a big, like, holy wedding, and we're going to have this wedding feast in the kingdom of heaven, and it's just gonna all end well, and we're gonna be there for eternity, happily ever after. That's our happily ever after. It's not something fake anymore, you know? I can go back and tell the old me and be like, hey, you know, this is me from the future. You see, you're living in this. There is the kingdom out there, you know? And one day we're gonna be in that kingdom, and you know, it's just great. And so I just like the idea of that with the fairy tales. I don't know if you like fairy tales yourself, but regardless, even if you think fairy tales are like, you know, you might not be into the whole vibe of like Disney princesses and the fairy tales and stuff, but how could you not be into this real fairy tale that we have? I don't care who you are, where you are, your views on stuff. Regardless, we are in this reality, and Jesus is coming back for his bride at some point, and we will eventually get our happily ever after. The end.